The core of your business is worker safety and safe work methods. And it's not hard to do. You just have to have the leadership has to understand the investment is the rate of return in repeat business, good business, profitable business. The worst thing you can do is go do a job and have to go back and redo it because you didn't do it right the first time. That's not very good job planning.
Hey everybody, welcome to the Electrical Safety Podcast. I'm your host, John Travis, and today I'm speaking with Dean Gatien. Dean, thanks for coming on the show.
Thanks for inviting me, John.
Yeah. I mean, just to get started, we usually, maybe just give the audience a bit of your background, how you got involved in electrical world and safety and all that. And you can go back as far as you'd like and as long as those stories you want.
It's inevitable how your environment influences yourself and you don't really know about it. I sat at the table of my father, who was in the electrical high voltage business and didn't really know it, but at 10 years old, had us doing stuff on equipment. At 14, I was helping out in the yard. And by 16, I was working underground, which at the time was not supposed to be done, but we had no Occupational Health and Safety Act in place. But, by 18, fairly entrenched in what we were doing in our business. It was our family business, PowerTel. And by 23, I was doing some fairly active project work. And at about 26 or 27, I had finished my end of my CET, my Certified Electrical Engineering Technologist program, and went into the office. And by 1988, became an owner with my brother. We bought my dad out. So very quickly jumped in at 27 years old, being a business owner and figuring I had the world by the tail. And I think at about 60, I finally figured out what I didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And so it has been a great career, a great life being in the business. And we sold our business 10 years ago. And 4 years ago, I started an advisory business, thinking that everything I did in management processes and health and safety and quality and environment and business relationships, business development, all those things, strategy, training, risk review. And I figured that, the risk review part and the strategy part and the planning part were things that I always missed out on. And so I've made myself available to people I know and companies that have called me to try to get through that. And so that's kind of where I'm at. I've started at 14. I'm going to be 65 in March. So lots has been done, but there's lots to do yet. And the world is on fire with electrification right now. So I think it's probably a good time to stay around.
Yeah, there is a lot of stuff going on. So you mentioned the word that jumped out at me in that story is you said underground. So that to me means mining.
That's correct. Yep.
What kind of mining was it?
My dad had a very good friend, Vince Capeless. My father, Clary, he had a good friend at Denison Mines in Elliott Lake. So that was uranium. And we did all the power underground. There was thousands of miles of road. It was unbelievable. It was probably enough power down there to power Toronto at the time.
Yeah.
That was kind of 86 to 89 when I did some stuff on and off there. Did lots of mining at Hemlo as well. We did lots of shaft cables and service power and so forth. So we were the first ones to walk into Hemlo. There wasn't even a tree cut yet. So,
wow, yeah.
It's kind of funny how things go. When I traveled to Thunder Bay, past there on the way to Marathon, there was a big 3-phase bank we had put up on a wood pedestal that was supposed to be a temporary power thing in 1984. It's still there today.
Yeah. Temporary permanent.
You hit it. It was rebuilt transformers we had found for Redpath for their garage. And that garage stayed with the mining company and it's still there today. It's kind of funny. You do good work and that sticks around. So,
yeah. So I know, I got my start in all of this in the mining world. And when I came in, electrical safety was not really in the company at all, but at least, people were talking about it.
Yeah.
I can imagine in the 80s. I'm just curious, how was even safety viewed back then in general?
It wasn't. Let me give you a very quick short story. So the Electrical Utility Safety Association, now IHSA, was around for a long time. It's been around since the Workers' Compensation Act came into place in 1914. The USA became in existence in 1915. My dad was very involved in USA because of something that happened to a friend of his in Thunder Bay when he was at Thunder Bay Hydro. He'd been to Ontario Hydro as an apprentice in 46 after the war. Went on to Manitoba Hydro, Winnipeg City Hydro, and back to Thunder Bay. And that's where he met my mother, his wife. And that's where most of us were born. And the company started in 53. But by the late 60s, early 70s, some friends of his, the Kelletts, Greg and Glenn Kellett at K-Line, Mo Shepard at Shepard's Utility, Jim Mason at Pefco. He was a Black and Mac then, now his Pefco. These guys became kind of a group and they got involved in a lot of stuff. My dad became the president of USA in 77. And it was during that time, about 76, there was the famous cave-in at Elliott Lake. And kind of weird. The day before, I was hanging power cable in the drift where that cave-in occurred.
Mm-hmm.
So if it hadn't rained hard and put some trees on the line, we had to go clear off the 44 kV line on surface that day. Otherwise, I would have been there. So it was kind of ironic that the storm came and I wasn't involved in that incident. But what came out of it was my dad came to Elliott Lake with his two friends, Len Sylvester from Construction Safety Association and Chuck Talon from USA. And they wanted to bring a guy with them to go look at it. And so they went to look at Elliott Lake, see what the problem was. And that's when the wildcat strikes were going on. So they came back to our house. This was, my dad was famous and notorious for it. He would find people on the road and they would come back to our house and he'd expect my mother to cook for them. So, but that's where he did things. He gathered people and broke bread with them. And, he always told me, if you want to get to know somebody, break bread with them. So these guys came to the house. This was 76. And in the late 80s, I became part of the Sudbury Construction Association after becoming an owner at PowerTel. And by 89, they saw that I was very interested and very involved in safety. I became chairman of the safety committee, chairman of the regional labor management committee for CSAO. So I got to go to this meeting in 1989. They were having this 10th anniversary for the Occupational Health and Safety Act. And they put a picture of this guy up on the screen. And I went, I know that guy. And I walked to the back of the room to see Len Sylvester, the CEO of Construction Safety Association. I said, that's the other guy that was in my kitchen with you. He goes, you remember that? I said, yeah, vividly. And it was Dr. Ham. And he was the guy that was the Ham Commission that created the Occupational Health and Safety Act in Ontario. And the Mining Act was in 78. And the Construction Act came in 79. And that had a lasting impact on me that I became very involved. And very shortly after that, got on to the Provincial Labor Management Safety Committee as a member, representative for Electrical Contractors Association at this committee. And the things we went through were tremendous. But back in those days, safety wasn't a thing. You talk about the 60s and 70s. People fought about it, but there wasn't really a moniker for it. There wasn't a direction for it. We had no law. And because so many things were happening, the law came into place, and people make laws because they have to. And so we had to make something to make a guideline and a structure and the rules for health and safety. So it was really interesting times as a young person to kind of see that, to come forward that, we've been through the Occupational Health and Safety Act. When my father started in the high voltage business in the mid 40s, the fatality rate in the high voltage world was 50%. And you either lived through it or you got mangled and left, or you had a close call and you just called it quits and went somewhere else. Mm-hmm. In the late 90s, my brother was president of ECAO, my brother Wayne, who was our president. And he got to the point, he was at a meeting in Niagara Falls, Electrical Utility Safety Association. And I remember it very well in him calling me, and the fellow that was there, Rick Stolbaum, he was the vice president of training at the time at USA. And he put a report up and he said, we're going to forecast that we're going to reduce the critical injury rate to 10%. And he looked at Mark Kellett, who was one of the sons of the Kelletts, and him and Wayne looked at each other and they stopped the meeting right in the middle. They said, no, we're not doing this anymore. And they actually threatened to get off the board and do some things that, would have really been disruptive. But at the end of the meeting, they agreed we need to figure out how to get to zero.
Mm-hmm.
And so they started the discussions, and a very good friend of ours, his name is Dr. Ted Vandevis, was the CEO of USE at the time. And he created a document that was called The Path to Zero. And so all of a sudden things like Zero Quest and so forth came out of it. And it became sort of a audit process and a building process for people to understand safety and build on safety. And when it got to be about 93 or 4, we loved it because the Workers' Compensation Board, which became the WSIB in Ontario, wanted to take on the idea. We said, steal it, take it, go with it. So the Path to Zero became the Paths to Zero. So it was multiple methods, multiple trades, and all of a sudden zero became the requirement. And just to have an incident where somebody cut themselves or banged themselves or, anything at all became an issue for people to deal with. So the mindset of being careful, and it got to the point where we felt it was distracting. Everybody was kind of looking over their shoulders. We said, no, we don't want to be police officers. We want you to have the resources and the mentality and the mindset and the culture and the empowerment to go do work correctly. And then everything else will come from it. So work safe, figure out your methods, do your procedures, and then become efficient. And I got into a discussion one time. We were doing a job in the Northeast US. We were building for 2 Canadian companies, Great Lakes Power, which had Great Lakes Power America. They were a generator, and Emera, who owned Bangor Hydro at the time in Maine. And we were doing a transmission line for them. And we were kind of a mix. We'd had to deal with work visas and management visas and dealing with IBW in the Northeast. And IBW in Massachusetts, Maine is very strong, very good organization. I was amazed at the training they did and they supported. They would come to the job with safety glasses and gloves and so forth and just drop them off and say, here, it's for your job. Well, that's unheard of around here. Anyways, bit of a cowboyish attitude with some of them that were there. Were some great tradespeople there. But I came up one day and we had a meeting and I was trying to talk about how, the safety, we're going to do it right. We're going to be efficient. And one guy spoke up and he said, how the hell do you think we're going to be productive and safe at the same time? And I went, oh, that's a good discussion. So all of a sudden the 10-minute safety meeting became about an hour and a half. And I wanted to hear from them and I let them loose. I said, talk about it. So at the end of it, I said, productivity is safety. I said, we're going to do it right. We're going to figure out the procedure for it. We're going to review it. We're going to document it in a job plan. And I said, we're going to be consistent. And the word consistent, you can put productivity there. As soon as you're consistently safe and consistently good, you're going to get effective and efficient at it. That's productivity. Because I said, the moment you're not safe and something happens, you're shut down.
Mm-hmm.
That's not productivity anymore. So, the hurry up and wait, all of a sudden we got to do an incident, somebody's hurt and we got to deal with it. And I said, that'll cost you millions if you're shut down. So to get that, I often have this discussion in a lot of the Indigenous led projects where we have to get politics and economics to meet. Mm-hmm. We got safety and productivity to meet in an understanding and an attitude. And that was, one of the most critical things to go to safety today versus what it was 50 years ago. And I think it's, we took rules and we put them into procedures and mindset and job planning.
Yeah. I mean, that's a really cool, thought, but that's something that, I'd even say I've gone into places today. Well, I know I have for sure, where they still don't get that. They still don't get the productivity and safety kind of combining. And, obviously you've seen probably a big transition over the years, and they're getting closer and closer. But, or maybe here's an exercise. Could you, and maybe you've got a company in mind. Could you paint a picture for an organization that is actually doing it right? And what does that culture look like? What does their day to day look like? I mean, because I think some people just don't believe that it's possible.
It's possible. And I have two names for you. One is my nephew, who came out of being their director of operations. And when we sold the business, just by circumstance, he moved on, as did I, in 2020. And he started up Power North, which was actually a company name my dad had started many, many years ago. And my brother and I had used it for a holding company. He's small. He's probably 50 people, and he knows how to do it, but he's been there. He's done it. He knows how to do the empowerment, the training, the annual reviews. So that's the small end.
Mm-hmm.
You want to see safety in unending, no other way but have it done correctly. There's going to be three. I'm going to tell you the world Mike Doherty came from at OPG, but that's the nuclear world, and it's extreme to a point because it has to be. But the other company that I wanted to tell you, and they probably do, I don't know, 30 plus billion a year, is Kiewit.
Mm-hmm.
It's the mindset. I think about Lanny Floyd, who came into the business at DuPont in the 70s, and they were awful. They were killing people left, right, and center. And he brought them out of it, that they're now the leaders. He's the guru of safety. He just wrote a book on it. But it's about mindset, and there's no other way. And it becomes your mode of operation. The core of your business is worker safety and safe work methods. And it's not hard to do. We were very successful and very profitable in that mindset and culture. And it is easy to do. You just have to have the leadership has to understand the investment is the rate of return in repeat business, good business, profitable business. The worst thing you can do is go do a job and have to go back and redo it because you didn't do it right the first time. That's not very good job planning. Yeah. So, and that we beat people up and lose them over time. So we were extremely happy in that we had many people that worked for us that had 40-year careers with us. Not 40-year careers in the business, 40-year careers with us. Wow. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
So
that's impressive.
Yeah.
How do you, actually one question just real quick. Do you know the name of Lanny's book?
I don't, but I will get it for you.
Okay.
Yeah, I think it's just out, and Mike will remember too. Mike's the one that told me about it, but I will get that name to you.
The other thing I was thinking was, you mentioned management leadership. Something I find, and I'm curious what your thoughts are. It seems like everywhere I go, for the most part, they understand safety in general. They get it. But when it comes to electrical, I still get the oh yeah, those guys know what they're doing thing. And even this, the safety manager of a big mine or something, and they've got fall arrest and confined space and all of that sorted out. And then they get to the electrical and they just leave it to the electrical department. Do you still find that? And then also, what are your thoughts on how do you educate those management teams and kind of bring them up to speed?
It's a discussion. It's a strategy. It's a planning effort. And I think one of the fellows that helped me get to this point along the way is, come to me. He was the general manager at Great Lakes Power in the Sioux, Dwayne Fecting. And Dwayne's a financial guy. He was general manager, but he knew the buck stopped at his desk, and there was no way anything was going to happen. Anybody was going to get hurt. Their system was going to get tripped or triggered or hurt, damaged. And we would spend sometimes hours going through a risk review session, a job planning session, a project review, to the point of, we've done this already. Let's do this one more time. But we've gone through it over and over and over again. And he had to have it settled in his self, being a non-tradesperson, non-electrical, that it was safe to go. So what I got to him was, our safe work methods in high voltage were trained to go up to and including touching high voltage, like 230 and 500 kV live. But there are safe work methods, there are tools, there's planning, there's training. It gets very detailed. But I said, everything we do, there is a job plan for it. There is a training requirement for it. There's reviews, oversight, supervision, like even just doing some work around energized circuits, not electrical live work, but in proximity. I said, we have a dedicated observer to make sure nobody's getting inside the perimeters. And I said, even to the point where we can help people doing civil work, mechanical work, structural work, you bring a dedicated observer in, and anybody can do work in a live situation with the right person there watching and overseeing what they're doing. So I think the headache is people are afraid of it. And so fear creates stress and discomfort. And so they just go away and say, well, you're trained, you figured out. You still need the leadership to say, let's do the training, let's do the investment, let's do observations. And the leadership should get somewhat of a high level understanding of what it is, so they can recognize the right people to do it and the right activities are happening. So I think the leadership has to get to the point of understanding it and putting the right people in place and empowering them and authorizing them to do their job. But they still have to keep people in check with doing their job. But the heartache is most CEOs are either financial people, business people, and not trade oriented when they get into these utility businesses, construction companies, whatever. And it's to get that mindset of, I need to at least understand at a high level what it is we're doing, because it's a risk review and it's a corporate review. And if somebody's hurt or injured, or for, even worse situations, there's a fatality, goes right to the CEO as the first place the Ministry of Labor starts,
Yeah. And I mean, that kind of raises another question for me, because or reminded me of maybe a story. I remember, no, this wouldn't have been the CEO, but it was a general manager at a facility I was at one time. And he kind of pressed me with the question, or he said something along the lines of, well, I've hired all electrical workers, so why do we need to do anything else? Like, they're qualified already, And so I'm curious what you would say to that individual who maybe thinks that because you hire quote unquote qualified workers, what else is there to do for them?
I would ask them, how do you verify that? So either they're going to have good training records. They'll also have annual reviews, things like emergency response training. Do you guys do that? I would ask that question. How's your emergency response training? Well, how often do you do it? If they're not doing it once a month, I'd be worried. Do they have a management system in place that they can check down to for what the steps are for their work every day? Can you show me their work inspection? Can you show me their equipment inspections? Can you show me their job plans? Can you show me your reviews? You want to do a real easy one. We used to do a customer survey in our quality management system and ask the customer to respond to, how did we do? And the last question was, what could we do better? What did we do that wasn't adequate? Things like that. And if they didn't answer it, I still called them and had a one-on-one with them to just say, tell us how we get better for you. We want to do repeat business with you. And that'd be my last question. Do you do repeat business with your top 10 customers? Do they want you back? So, and then the last would be, show me your safety statistics. What are they like? And if they start showing me a whole bunch of trips and falls and dings and nicks and equipment backing up and all that kind of stuff, I'm going, well, you're lucky so far, but you got a lot of little things you could fix. And if you fix the little things, it's, the old adage of the low-lying fruit. If Ministry of Labor inspector comes around for just a random inspection and he asks you for your equipment inspection or show me your job plan, or God forbid you're doing traffic control, you don't have a traffic control plan, that's the low-hanging fruit. And then they start digging into it. Show me your driver's license. Show me your operator certificate. Show me your journeyman certificate. Show me something, and they could shut a job down real fast if all of a sudden the support for the people working isn't there.
Yeah, well, I think there's maybe a lot of places out there that would have a tough time showing anything because it's
correct.
It just seems like they hire so-and-so and put them to work.
So let me ask you a question. I tell people this all the time. Do you think we have any new kinds of injuries we've never seen before?
I'm going to say no.
No. Yeah. Trips, slips, falls. Most of them are awareness. Most of them are housekeeping. Most of them are safe access and egress to work, having the right equipment, having the right tools. One of the worst discussions I ever had with one of my best supervisors was trying to tell him a step ladder was not a work platform. And I caught him standing on the very top of an 8-foot step ladder, trying to grab his toolbox. He forgot to grab off the top of a breaker that he was just at with the man lift. So I said, why didn't you just bring the man lift back and go get it? Well, I would have taken time. And I said, you were about 1.5 seconds away from falling and breaking something dramatically. I said, do you think your wife and 2 boys would be happy if you couldn't work anymore? I said, so anyways, I said, look around. How many people are inside this substation? He goes, I don't know. It's about 15 guys here. And I said, what do they think they saw? The guy with the white hat standing on top of the ladder. So you lead by example. You do things with good intent. You take the time to do them right. So there's so many little things people can do just by looking up, looking around. What's here that's going to bite me in the butt? What hazards are right nearby? Just simple stuff. And start with that. And that creates a mindset and a culture real fast when you stop and look. That guy became one of the best advocates. He was our best worker, leader, the quality of workmanship that came out of it. But at that moment in time, he became one of the best advocates we had for health and safety because we had a moment, nothing happened. And to me, that was a near miss. So we created that process inside our organization, the near miss. And I said, I want 50 or 60 of these every day so we don't have incidents. Make an observation and write it down. Simple little things. And man, oh man, when the people understood there was a non-reprimand process to observe safety. And I said, I'm not going to give you a prize. I said, I don't like doing prizes because the first day you give a coffee cart, the next day it's an iPad, the next day it's a leather jacket. Where do you stop? So the prize has to go to everybody. And that's when you gather and celebrate. And again, get to know them, break bread with them, have a barbecue, have a supper, whatever. The mindset and culture of electrical, unfortunately, our industry has the most exposure to stuff. We're working with electrical energy and it will mangle you or kill you quickly. You don't usually get second chances with electricity. And that's why we do things like, 12-foot sticks and 230. There's a reason for that. It's staying outside the arc plume that's going to come off it. If something goes wrong, you're away from it. Rubber gloves, arc rated clothing, flash glasses, all that kind of stuff. And then, when people have to do that moment in time of flipping a breaker in a station, that's when they put their helmet and flash gear on and their suit and so forth. You don't need to wear it for the shift. You need to wear it for that moment in time. You do the activity, put the proper PPE on. It's now dead. Okay, now we can take it off and go to work. So a lot of those places are out there and they're on the edge of it. And again, that's that safety productivity thing. And it's all the leadership needs to understand what's involved and the investment involved, and they'll get it back 100-fold in employee retention, productivity, repeat business, profitability. It all goes together. We always told people there was kind of 4 prongs to doing business, and that was safety, environment, quality, and business. And they all had equal billings. There was business parts we had to do, but if we did it safe and did all the documentation and met all the requirements and regulations and worked in a very impactful way, the business part was easy.
So if you think back to kind of how, things got started, and then some of the maybe major chunks of ideas that were implemented over the years, and then think to where we are today, kind of as a collectively as a whole. I know I've talked to a few people who I know that maybe they're on the CSA Z462 or NFPA committees, and they sort of feel like, not that they dropped the ball, but that, man, we could have did even better, or we could have implemented more. Like, what are some of the things that maybe you either see as, hey, these were fantastic and they made a huge difference, or, oh, I wish we could have been able to implement this one there?
Yeah, there was one of the things that comes out of everything we did is continuous improvement. And no matter how good you are or how well you've done, you have to prepare for tomorrow. And so we used to do the plan, do, check, act process from normal health and safety ideas, and we used it for everything. Our business activities, our environmental management, our quality management system, because safety was at the core of everything we did. We had to do things in a certain way. We had to set up equipment a certain way. We had to handle poles a certain way, pull wire correctly, do energized work correctly, grounding, anchoring, all that had to be done in the same method, consistent method, safe method, because it was not as much that it was electrical, it was that it was mechanical as well. We picked up, big reels of wire. We pulled big tensions, all that kind of stuff. So I think from the beginning, safety was not really something you thought about. If it worked out okay today, we did good. The quality of work was always there. I have to say, for a long time, the standards and the quality of work inside high voltage has been very good. Mm-hmm. We've improved that over and over. And I saw it with a good friend of mine who's now retired, Peter Ketchpole, who was one of the leaders at Power Engineers in Idaho, but he's originally from Niagara Falls and worked at Great Lakes Power, and before he went to Power Engineers. And he always talked about, trying to figure out, how do we make this better? How do we improve it? And their engineers think about not only the standard or the strength of a structure or the ability for it to hold tension. They think about where it's got to go. Can we get a line crew in there safely to install this? Is this a good place that we can get to come back to routinely to do maintenance? That kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. I think we've done a great job of getting off injuries are part of work. We're going to have injuries to the mindset of zero. Injuries are not required. To see how, the organizations, like I said, Kiewit does stuff. The thing I said earlier, we haven't created any new injuries. We're still having the same injuries. So we're not there yet. We've still got things to improve. It's really better than it's been, but it's about making sure every day. And this is where all the things of getting to know your people come in. How long have they been working? Is it a long shift? Has it been a long run? Sometimes we ran, when I was a kid at Hemlo, there were times where we did nonstop 30 and 40 day runs. Come home for 4 or 5 days and go back again, because gold was so expensive. We needed to get the power in that mine site to get the gold produced. Yep. And just get it done nonstop, to the point where we even started doing 2 shifts of work to what can we do at night to get ahead. little things like that. When we do big transmission jobs, we have 2 shifts for the mechanics. The productivity equipment that's working 10, 12 hours a day was getting serviced at night. At the end of the day, we gave the supervisors the authority to go up to an hour over the end of the day, and we would pay overtime, but finish the job, finish the task, move the equipment, clean it up, fuel it up, get it ready for the next day. So those things bought minutes, and minutes on a large job where you've got, 6 pole setting crews and you want to put in 60 poles a day. And if there's any way we can do 61 or 62 safely, adequately, without pressing the people or equipment or the process, we're going to do it. Mostly because a lot of the transmission line work we do has winter access, and you've only got a certain time period to get in and do it. And you plan to do so much, and then you're done and you're out. And when Mother Nature says you're done, you're done. So I think we're working on the things that are affecting people. You don't know what their life is like. Are they having any issues at home? Have they got sick parents at home? Do they have kids that need to be looked after? Are they having financial issues? Is there other things going on? Did somebody die recently from an illness? All of those things are now entering our world. What's affecting this person, this man or woman that's working, from being focused 100% on work to do it safely? Because the worst thing you can do is be up in the air trying to put a set of grounds on something and your cell phone's ringing in your pocket. So we had to make policies for that. No cell phones on the job, nothing up in the air, only in the truck, only in the office, at coffee breaks, unless there's an emergency. And then again, we would give them the ability to find out, where am I working? What am I doing? But the distractions in today's world are worse than ever, with cell phones, computers, communication. Our ability to communicate is so good now. I think about what Starlink has done to remote job sites and remote offices and so forth. I mean, I don't have a cell service where I am. I use it at home. Our internet's terrible. And so Starlink has been a game changer for me. So the technology is a game changer for us. We're way better than we used to be. The kids are way smarter. I've seen the productivity of kids coming out of the Cambrian course. We started on Power Line, and even the Line Crew Ground Support for First Nation make ready people. And the kids are so smart today, but their need for information and answers is constant. So understanding who the people are and what they are, and that generational gap of, old people like me, the Y generation, and then the millennials that are there. And the millennials are starting to be half the workforce, if not more now. I think about it. My kids are 34 and 35. They're not 10 anymore. And they're the ones managing the work. They're the ones taking over the work. I'm just the outside. So it's that longevity issue to new issue where you got to balance everybody together. And some of the stuff we did is turned into bad habits. So having good training, qualified trainers, qualified instructors has been a game changer, I think, in the line trade. But the need for transfer of knowledge and the need for being better and continuous improvement will never end. Unfortunately, there will still be incidents, and you see them all the time. I look at the statistics now that are still happening in North America, and I'm going, why? Why are we still doing this? Lanny Floyd says the same thing all the time. Like, what are we doing different? We got to do something different. So, and I think that's going to come down to leadership and mindset and culture, and the companies that do that are going to be successful, and the ones that don't are going to continue to roll on and have issues. So,
yeah, I think something that, just as we've been talking here today, that I've kind of formulated in my mind, it seems like once you get the basic systems in place, and you've got PPE and tools and all that, and you kind of have that, you're probably going to bring the numbers down a certain amount.
They're substantially better. Yep.
But then to get that last whatever percentage it is, it really is the human factor.
It's the human factor. You nailed it.
And that probably isn't going to change, or not change very quickly, since we've been acting somewhat the same for however many thousands or millions of years.
It's been 110 years since the Workers' Compensation Act came into Ontario. And what tells me we still have issues is the rules and legislation gets tighter and tighter and tougher and tougher. And we're back to 1979 where we needed to make rules because there was too many people getting hurt and killed.
Mm-hmm.
So we still have issues of injuries and rehab that have to be dealt with, and they're costly. So why not invest that money in people's safety and well-being versus investing it in lawyers and fighting stuff and paying claims and paying for people to sit at home injured and have the stress in their lives of I'll never work again and that kind of stuff. Let's invest in making sure people don't get hurt.
I know it's probably all over the place, but what are some of the numbers that, if you're a manager at a facility that's got 300 employees and you have an incident or an injury, like what order of magnitude, what kind of numbers is going through that person's head is that incident or injury is going to cost?
Hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Okay.
What needs to go through people's mind is, how do I make sure we don't have an injury?
Mm-hmm.
It's the biggest thing. I mean, unfortunately, there's still people getting killed and mangled in high voltage work. Not like it used to be, but it still happens. And every one of those incidents, when you do the root cause analysis, you're going to find something somewhere that somebody deviated from a safe work method. They took a shortcut. They didn't put their gloves on. They didn't put their sticks on. They didn't check the grounds. They didn't check for the nomenclature. They didn't verify the circuit. They didn't do a potential check. Something simple didn't get done. And now somebody's either mangled or gone.
Mm-hmm.
So the mindset and culture of consistent activity is so worth it. The investment in quality management systems and health and safety management systems is the biggest investment and the best return on your money you can make as a business.
Yeah, and I guess that's where, now that you've kind of moved into the consulting world, I don't know how much you come up across that, but I'm sure you're not charging the clients hundreds of thousands of dollars in, let's say, one exercise.
No.
And they're still probably looking at it and going, geez, an awful lot of money for what? What are we getting for here? And they don't understand. They can't piece that together.
Yeah. And if they can't understand it, a person like me is probably not called and probably not there for long.
Yeah.
And I think you may encounter that from time to time and doing the great things you guys are doing and our flash assessments and everything else. And until a company understands it. And I guess that's why I'm fortunate that a lot of the organizations I work for are people I know and people that I've done, or they've called me to say, I need your help on something. So it gets to be an easier task, but if somebody gets into trouble and they're told to do something, that's a tough start. Can you come in and save us? No, I can't. I can come in and show you how to save yourself, but I can't do it. Unless you make me CEO or something, which I don't want to do anymore. No, I've been through that, and it's the struggle to look after the business, the bonding, the insurance, the people, the subcontractors, the projects, the contracts, all that kind of stuff. That was invigorating. That was, going with your hair on fire, but understand where to start and how to fix something. It's nice to get some knowledge and perspective from an outside help to say, here's where you go, and you spend a little bit of time and send them on their way. And then you just kind of keep up with them. But until the leadership makes a decision that this is the right investment, this is what we need to do for the betterment of our business and the well-being of our people, it's going to be tough sledding for them. And that sled will be, constantly going down the wrong track or going off the rails. So.
No, that's spot on. That's maybe a good place to to end on. Before we go, if people want to get in touch with you, or maybe you got something going on that you wanted to share,
A couple of easy spots. You can find me at my website, got all my contact information at DGG5Advising.com. If you want to hear some great conversations, I know I've told you about my podcast, Powerful Connections. It's easy to get to. And if anybody wants to find me, pretty easy to find at Dean at DGG5Advising.com. Those that want to reach out, that's where I am. Appreciate the time. And, you can talk about things for hours, but actions speak louder than words. So,
Perfect. Thanks so much.
All right.
And
take care. Thanks very much.